Let me get started right away by introducing Dr. Sullivan. Dr. Kim Sullivan is our featured speaker tonight. She is an expert in ornithology, on birds. She spent a career studying birds, studying their behavior, studying their ecology. And she is also a longtime member of the Department of Biology here at USU. And she is a very accomplished teacher in addition to a very accomplished researcher. And some of the classes that she offers are some of the most enjoyable ones that one can take at USU. You can study ornithology. We call it spring semester, but you think back to when we started, it's more like winter, and you can get up early in the dark, go out with Kim, and learn your birds taking ornithology. Or you can explore animal behavior with her. So she teaches wonderful classes here. She has also had a very active lab for many years and has had very many very talented graduate students. She and they have worked on a wide variety of issues and topics in ornithology, dealing with many species, everything from dippers to nutcrackers to woodpeckers to willow flycatchers to juncos, and fascinating research. And she's very active now with her students in a very important, interesting research area that she is going to be telling you about tonight. So I will leave it to her to tell you. And in fact, I think I should turn this over now to Dr. Sullivan so that we can enjoy her talk. So, Kim?
Hey. Okay, thank you, Ted, and thank you, everybody, for coming. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about science facts and science fiction about birds, and we're going to start kind of with a theme of looking at a famous movie about birds called The Birds. So what parts of this movie, Alfred Hitchcock movie, made in 1963, how many people have seen The Birds? Which parts are science fact and which parts are science fiction? So, some of you may remember the scene, a very famous scene from this movie, where the crows attack school children. But we're not going to show the part where they actually attack anyone. So let me see if we can get the sound up here.
As quietly as possible, not make a sound until I tell you to run. And run as quickly as you can. Now, does everybody understand? All right, John, you do it.
The birds are coming up. Okay, so that was enough scariness, and now we will leave that one. So the question is it science fact or is it science fiction that birds gather in very large groups, like these crows on the playground? So put your hands up if you think it's science fact, and put your hands up if you think it's science fiction. Okay, the facts have it, and you are indeed right. Many species of birds gather in these groups. Now, the group we just saw, those crows, a lot of those were puppets. But real-life birds do gather like that. We see red-winged blackbirds. Here's a roosting of red-winged blackbirds right before they go to sleep at night. And here is a roost of American crows, and you can see these in Logan at night, just at dusk. And here is a roosting of bald eagles. So this is really common behavior for birds to gather in these large groups like that. So that is science fact. What about flocks of birds coordinate their flight? Is that science fact? Put your hands up. Or do you think it's science fiction? Most people said fact. And most people, you're really smart, most people are right that birds do coordinate their flight. And so what we're going to watch is called a Murmation of Starlings. And this is where this is just at dusk as the starlings are going to roost. They will form these beautiful aerial displays. What they are doing is they are doing these intricate flights to avoid having raptors coming and picking them off as they head to their roost trees. So it's very hard to pick off one bird in this moving, so it looks like almost like a tornado of birds, does it? And so this is, watch them, they'll all come together. They're like black in the sky, and they just come together and they're moving. They do this by paying attention to the closest 7 birds. So they're paying attention to the closest 7 birds, and they have hundreds of little bristles on their body so they can sense changes in air pressure from the wing beats of the birds nearest to them. So it is science fact that birds do have organized flights. So the next one. In this movie, the birds keep harassing this one character, Melanie Daniels. They seem to follow her around and keep finding her around the town of Bodega Bay and attacking her. So the question is, can birds really recognize individual humans and pick out one human in a crowd? How many people think this is science fact? Quite a few facts. How many people think it's science fiction? Quite a few people think it's science fiction. Well, this is science fact. Crows recognize individual human faces. And they hold grudges for many years about people they don't like. So do not go and harass crows, because not only will they remember, they will tell all the crows in the neighborhood that you are not a nice person. So when crow researchers go to band crows and to color mark them so they can study them, they wear Halloween masks when they climb up in the tree, and band and weigh and take blood samples from the baby crows. And that way, the parents don't recognize them as the evil monsters. Well, they did a study, and they found these offspring. Now, these guys were just little nestlings. They had just opened their eyes when they were banded. 3 years later, they did a study, and they went and found those crows living in Seattle, and they put on that mask, and those crows attacked them. And even though they were the offspring, their parents taught them that that was an evil person. And here we have the guy running away from the crows on the streets of Seattle. Okay, the next one is science fact or science fiction. Do crows attack school children? Who thinks this one's fact? We got a couple people. Who thinks it's fiction? Yes, this one is indeed fiction. Okay? Actually, there was an incident of an 8-year-old schoolgirl in Washington. This is in the Seattle area. And every day on her way to school, she would put out some nuts for crows in her neighborhood. She had a little feeder, and she would put out the nuts on her way to the school bus. And the crows started bringing her little gifts each day. So they would only bring it when she put the nuts out. If her brother put them out, they wouldn't bring any gifts. But only when she put the nuts out, they would bring, and she has a whole collection, you see, of these little treasures. Oops, wrong one. These little treasures here that these crows have brought her. So they do recognize individual humans. They do remember who they like and who they don't like. but they don't go around attacking school children. Oops. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about bird eyes and what the birds are actually seeing. So we've got a variety of bird eyes up here. And we got a little quiz here for you. Who do you think has the largest eye? So we got 4 possible answers. How many thinks the elephant's eye is the largest eye on a land animal? Who votes for elephant? Okay, a couple votes. Who votes for the ostrich? So the ostrich is standing right here. That's the ostrich. Who votes for ostrich? Oh, lots of votes for ostrich. Who votes for the giraffe over here? Okay, who votes for the primate? This is the gorilla. He's really big. Who votes for him? Got a couple people? Okay, let's see who has the biggest eye. It is the ostrich. The ostrich's eye is actually larger than its brain. Yes, isn't that amazing? Huge eyes. And here is a diagram of an ostrich head. And look at the size of its eyeball in its skull. You see how it takes up most of the skull? There's not much room for the brain, is there? No. So, eyes in birds take up most of their inside of their head. And they have a kind of a flattened shape. You notice this is a parabolic shape instead of being a really round shape. They're really big and they're flattened, so they got lots of space for that retina where the images are projected. They also have lots of cones that detect color. So birds see with great visual acuity and they see with great color accuracy. Okay, they can resolve images about 2.5 to 3 times the ability of a human eye. So they could easily see small print at the back of the room from the front of the room. You know, they can see things pretty far away, which is useful when things are going to eat you. So I need a volunteer to come and help up with try out some. You want to come up and help try out some bird eyes? I've got some. These are not real eyes, but these are the size of bird eyes if you had bird eyes. You got to take off your glasses. You put them right here. I want you to reach in and grab them and hold them up to your eyes. Turn around. This is what you're going to look like if you had bird eyes. Okay, now I want you to look to the side. Your eyes are so big they can't move in your head. If you want to look over on this side, what are you going to have to do? Okay, now what are you going to do if you want to look over on that side? Are you going to be always moving your head around?
Yes.
Yes. So birds always have to move their head because their eyes are too large to move inside their head. Okay, thank you very much. So we have here a little video that shows a pigeon walking. And notice its head is always bobbing. See how its head is always moving? It's because it can't move its eyes inside the skull. It has to move the whole head. So everybody think, look to one side of the room, but move your whole head. That's what you would have to do if you were a bird. Okay, so another interesting science fact about birds is that birds can see in the UV range. So our corneas block UV radiation, but they pass through the corneas of birds. So birds can see UV colors. So when we look at a bird, for example, this cockatiel here, we see this. This is the visible light spectrum. We're seeing images in the visible light. But when a bird looks, it gets to see both the visible light and the UV spectrum. So this is what it looks like to a bird. Okay, so birds see colors that we don't see. Everything in the UV range. Now, so we go up to a little question here. Becoming a bird detective. How do hawks find their prey? We have hawks hunt. They hunt mammal prey in fields. A lot of times you may have seen them perching like on an irrigation wheel or a post, or you may have seen them flying back and forth over a field. And they're looking for prey. They're looking for their dinner. They're trying to find small mammals to eat. So, here we have some audience participation. How many people think they watch and they use their great eyes to watch for prey moving around in the field? Lots of people. How many people think they smell those smelly little voles and moles and mice? How many people think they smell them? Nobody thinks they're very... Oh, one person does. How many people think they follow their urine trails? Oh, yes, we've got some of those. Well, the answer is pee trails. So, if you think about it, have you ever had a dog that peed on the carpet? You're trying to find the spot, and you shine the black light to find the spot with the pee? Or if you're watching the detective shows and they spray the luminol around the room and then they shine the black light and oh my gosh, all these like stains show up, that's old blood stains. Well, birds see those all the time. So they see those trails and they are actually flying back and forth and they're watching, because when small rodents run out of their burrow, they pee. And they leave those glow-in-the-dark, for the birds, little signatures that tells them where their burrow is, and they also where the runways are through the fields. So they are hanging out watching, but they're watching for mouse pee. Okay? And that's what this raptor right here is flying over the field looking down for this. So that's a kind of cool thing that birds can do because of their eyes that we can't do. Okay, we're going to go back to the movie The Birds. At one point in the scene, Melanie Daniels is in a phone booth and the gulls are flying at the phone booth and crack the glass trying to get at her. So our next question is, can the birds see the glass in the phone booth? So who thinks they can see the glass? Okay, who thinks that birds can't see glass? You're right. So how many of you have seen the movie The Storks? Remember when the stork can't get through the little sections with all the glass plates? Because he doesn't see glass? That is true. Bird eyes are such that they do not see glass, which is a problem, you can imagine. So, they don't see glass as a solid surface. To them, they cannot get their heads around it because they cannot see it. So, what do birds actually see? Well, here they see trees. Those are trees you can go and land on. And here they see a nice sky you can fly through. And here, you can fly right through there and into that tree. Because they do not see any of these as a solid surface. Their eyes allow them to see pea trails, but they don't allow them to see glass. So, this is a serious problem for birds. window collisions cause more deaths in the United States, bird deaths, than any other reason. So here we have, it's estimated that 1 billion birds die each year from flying into windows. And then the next one is cats, but that's a whole nother story. And then we have a number of other reasons: power lines, pesticides, hunting, colliding with vehicles, communication towers, and wind turbines. So if you've heard a lot about birds being killed by wind turbines, it's actually a fairly small number compared to their collisions with windows. And it's not skyscrapers. It's not collisions with skyscrapers that are killing them. It's collisions with anything from like 1 to 4-story buildings. About half of the deaths are caused by houses, in windows in your house, and half in small office buildings like we have on campus. So this is a collection of just some of the birds that in the last year we have collected around buildings on campus that flew into windows and died. And here are my excellent team this year, the Bird Strike Team: Brinley Harwood, Dylan Hopkins, Jonas Johnson, Michael Priest, and Rachel Sagers, and the ornithology class members who have been doing the census work, collecting the data, and trying to work to establish how to change the windows on campus so that birds don't keep flying into them. UV would be a good idea, yes. So we've got a lot of different birds. We even have an endangered species here which flew into the window, a yellow-billed cuckoo. These are robins. A lot of robins this year on campus flew into windows. Here's a bunch of hummingbirds. Lost a bunch of hummingbirds. And these all around the edge are cedar waxwings. Yep. It's kind of sad. So, how do you keep birds from flying into your window? Some people put up hawk decals on the window. So how many of you think this helps to keep birds away from the window? How many people think this is science fiction? Okay, this is totally science fiction. Okay, the bird will not fly into this bit of the window because that's solid. Okay? The bird will fly into the rest of the window, which it doesn't exist as far as the bird's concerned. Whereas if you put up this pattern of hawks, the bird won't fly through because it only sees tiny little spaces and they aren't big enough to fly through. So the hawk image is not seen by the bird as a hawk. It's just seen as a solid object it can't fly through. So putting up a single hawk on your window, not going to help. Unless you want to put up a whole bunch, and then you can't really look out the window. So, what can you do to stop bird collisions? Well, birds won't fly through an opening smaller than 4 inches by 2 inches. So if the bird thinks that the openings are very small, it will not fly into your window. So you have to trick the bird into thinking that this glass is actually a solid surface. And it really is a solid surface because when they land on the window, they do collide. But the bird doesn't know that. So we'll look at some things that actually do work. So some things that work, one product is called bird tape. And this is a product you can buy. And we have a desk outside after the talk where you can pick up a flyer on these different products. So we have ABC bird tape. This is American Bird Conservancy. And the box is 4 inches wide, so you can use the box to measure it when you install it. And you just peel it off and stick it on your windows. And this is another type of decal you can put on your window called feather-friendly decals that make a little grid here of dots. And you just put the rows of dots down. And that also makes it so the bird thinks this is a solid object you can't fly through. There are also films you can put on your window. One of them is made by Kaleidoscape. Here is a window. You can see it's reflecting trees. And this is inside after the Kaleidoscape film's been applied. And you can still see out. This is like a bus wrapper. You know, you've seen those bus wrappers where you can see out, but it looks solid on the outside. So that comes in white, it comes in black, and you can also get it printed like an advertisement, like a bus wrapper. So this is one that will let you see out, but the birds see this as something solid they can't fly through. Another type is a set of channels that you would mount on your window, and these parachute cords at 4-inch spacing that you can purchase the set, or you can actually make your own. And then again, it tells the bird that this is only a 4-inch wide opening, so they shouldn't fly through it. Now, there are some sort of do-it-yourself ways to do it that are just as effective. You can install your own cords or streamers at 4-inch intervals. You can install netting like you put over fruit trees to keep the birds away. You can go to a garden supply store and get netting and put it over, mount it on the window, and then the bird still sees the window, but they bounce off the netting instead of hitting the glass. You can put window screens up, which they will just bounce off the window screen. And you can paint designs or a grid or something on your windows that will only let no bigger spaces than 4 inches. Birds won't fly through. So these are all ways that actually do work in terms of trying to get birds to not fly into your windows. So how many of you have had a bird go thunk and hit your windows? Yeah, pretty much everybody. Yeah. It's average about 2 kills per house. We look across the country. About half of the birds that hit a window will die. About half are stunned, and they can recover. If you have cats and all, though, they can easily pick up the stunned birds and eat them. So that can be a problem. So who here thinks that they may now go and look at your windows and decide to maybe do something about them? How many people think they want to do that? At least think about it. Think about some of these options so you don't have that horrible sound of thunk against your window, and you don't contribute to our bird deaths in the valley. So, another thing that's important in affecting whether a window is a killing of birds or not is what's on the outside of the window. So if you put your bird feeder outside your window so you have a nice view of the birds using your bird feeder, you're most likely going to have more bird window strikes. So what happens is that once birds are, this is 5 meters, 15 feet away from the window, when they hit the window, they are flying at 30 miles an hour. And when they hit the window at 30 miles an hour, they often have, fatal injuries. So they can get up to speed very fast. So if your bird feeder is 1 foot, say, from the window, they're not going to be flying very fast when they hit, so they'll just bounce off. Okay, but if it's in the death zone here, this is from 15 to 30 feet away from the windows. If you have trees, especially fruit trees at that distance from your windows, or if you put your bird feeder at that distance from the window, you are more likely to have fatal strikes. So that's, it's not just the window itself, but it's also what is outside the window that's important. Okay, well, we have a research project on campus that we've started this year where we have 4 census routes, and we census them 3 times a week, looking for impact strikes on windows and looking for dead bodies. So some of those birds pictured on that one slide were picked up this year in our census protocol. But the students, our ornithology class, has been doing a great job of doing the census work this year, but they are done with school at the end of April. And we are looking for community volunteers to join us to help us with our census work this summer. So if you are interested, or if your family's interested in helping us out once a week, we have 12, so 4 routes, 3 times a week, 4 basic census routes, 12 census routes a week to cover. So we're looking for some help on this project. And what we're trying to find is the characteristics of windows on campus that contribute to the most bird kills. And we have other undergraduates that are working on solutions for these windows. We have a second project we're recruiting helpers on, and this is a study of woodpecker nesting success. And Sammy Cowell, here, you want to stand up, Sammy, and wave? Sammy Cowell, he has, and we have a couple other researchers from that project here. We've got Taryn, we've got Ryan. You guys want to wave? So we have 10,000 hours of videotape of woodpeckers' nests. So yes, this is a hole in a tree with birds going in and out. But what we're watching for is who else goes in and out. So we have video evidence of weasel running in and taking the chick. And we have a kestrel that reached in and pulled out the chick. And we have western bluebirds that went in and drove away the parents and took over the nest for themselves. And so we are trying to figure out these different interactions between species and their contribution to the success of woodpeckers. So Sammy is going to be, if anyone's interested in getting involved in this project, which you can do at home on your own computer, of watching woodpecker videos, we would love to enroll you in our research. So there's going to be a sign-up table outside if you want to help us out. So that is kind of the end of the talking part. And now I have lots of time for questions. Yes?
Is there any effect by the various coatings put on windows for the purpose of improving their thermal performance, like low-E glass or tints or anything?
No, they don't work at all.
No?
No. Do the low-E windows or the tinted windows decrease bird strikes? And no, they don't actually work. They work for energy conservation. They don't work for bird collisions. Yes? Would stained glass work? Yes, stained glass would work because it is not as transparent as a window is. So it would look more solid to the bird. Yes?
We noticed when we put up blinds that it didn't seem to help. If we wanted to see the birds, and so we don't completely close the blinds, but they're only partial, it didn't make any difference.
They're still getting the reflection on the outside of your window. So they're seeing a reflection of like a tree, and they're flying to land on the tree, except it's a window. Yeah, you can still see the reflections with blinds. It cuts down somewhat, but it's not complete success. Yes?
So you said that the birds sleep in a flock. Do they ever intermix breeds of birds that sleep?
In the same flock, they can. The roosts can have multiple species sometimes. But most birds would roost in a single species group. Yes? Do they fly into mirrors? Yes. So if you've noticed the University Inn on campus, especially on the west side, it's all those mirrored tiles. We have had, so not last fall, but the fall before, we had a lot of cedar waxwings on campus, feeding on the berries on trees, and they would gather in the trees just west of the University Inn, and a family of crows would hunt them by flying at the trees. And then the birds would fly to the next tree, but that next tree was really just a reflection in the mirrored tiles. And we'd get 25 or so birds killed at once, where they would just rain down on the sidewalk. So we were actually, at one point, we were probably killing more birds than any building in the whole country, it looked like, at that one site. So yes, they do fly into mirrors because they see the reflection.
So why do birds like crows roost together in the winter? I've heard it's because there are more birds to look for food. It seems like there'd be so many more birds that you'd have to share your food with. So I'm wondering why they roost together in the winter.
One hypothesis is that they do follow birds who were successful the day before finding food back to where they were. And so if a bird was unsuccessful, it can follow more successful birds to their foraging sites. And also by roosting together, they have, they're less vulnerable to predators that hunt at night, like great horned owls. Great horned owls kill a lot of birds. They can even kill like peregrine falcons. That's why birds go roost at night.
At the University of Michigan, there are thousands of them that gather, but only in the winter, and they only gather at night and they go out.
Yep. During the breeding season, they are on their own territories. So it's only when they're not breeding that they would gather in groups. Yes, over here. How do they crash into the window? They're flying because they think they can either fly through it to something on the other side, or they're flying and they see a reflection like of a tree, and they go to land on the tree, but they don't see the window and they fly right into it.
So it was very interesting that they follow the urine trails, but it seems like if the animal is going to leave a urine trail, they are far gone by the time the bird gets down to find their prey. So how does that help them?
They're creatures of habit. They run along the same trails. So you have these glowing trails through the field, and they just watch for the next one to run down the field, run along that trail.
Okay.
Has any birds died running into windows?
Yes. All those birds that were shown in that picture, that whole sheet that had the birds on it, they all died here on campus, running into windows.
So how their eyes are different than ours that they can see them?
Their cornea does not block UV. Ours does.
But it doesn't harm them?
No.
Do you know very much about western tanager and their presence here in Cache Valley?
Well, they come, were you here the year when we had so many?
Yeah.
So they come and they during migration, they stage here in the valley, and then they move up into the mountains or farther north. But if it's really bad conditions, they'll wait for it to get better. And so that one year we had thousands and thousands of tanagers waiting in Cache Valley for the snow to melt so they could go up into the mountains.
They're beautiful birds.
They are beautiful. And they are up in the mountains once they move up there, but they're just not as dense as they are at their waiting sites.
Does the death zone extend past humanity, or do they then move to other trees to roost in their
Does the death zone, yes.
Extend past 30 feet.
By 40 feet, they're more likely to fly off in another direction. So they're less likely to smack into that window. Yes. You've been waiting. In green shirt, right there with the yellow hair. Have there any reports of birds? Yes, they did one in our house this summer. We had a homing pigeon that flew into a window on our outdoor patio and broke the window. Yes. It was flying so fast. It broke the window. We haven't gotten it fixed yet, have we, Bruce? Not yet.
You have a question right there. And you probably better repeat them because
Okay, I can't hear him. Yes. Yes.
Are there actually yellow-billed cuckoos in campus, or did they fly into campus?
It flew onto campus from somewhere else, might have been migrating, and it crashed into the university inn. So the question was, are there yellow-billed cuckoos on campus or somewhere else? They're not usually seen on campus. And right next to you. Can they crash into the... Can birds crash into the water? The water is not as hard as a window. So when they land on the water, they don't get hurt. But there are problems when sometimes they see a little bit of water on a parking lot, and they think it's a lake, and they go to land, and they land really hard, and then we get whole flocks of birds that typically land on water will end up killing themselves by landing in a parking lot. Joanne.
Some birds have two phobias. Is that just birds of prey?
Yeah, birds, the question is, some birds have two phobias. So the fovea is the part of the retina that has the greatest concentration of rods and cones, so it has the greatest visual acuity. So birds of prey who have to see things from the front and things from the sides have two phobias. A lot of birds are mostly worried about something coming at them from the sides, and so they just have the one. But shorebirds have a groove that goes all the way across the retina, and so that they can see things that are moving on a horizon like a raptor hunting. Why can't birds? I'm not sure of the exact, I don't know if they know exactly why they can't. One thing we do know is that birds have a different fusion. The question is why birds can't see glass. Birds have a different fusion flicker rate than humans. So birds would see these lights flickering, and they would see the individual images on your TV. And that might be why they don't see glass as solid. Yes?
We heard an awful noise outside our office one day, and we went out, and there was a dead magpie, and there was this other magpie beside it, and it was beside itself making this awful noise.
The question is, outside the window, they saw this horrible noise, heard a horrible noise. There was a dead magpie, and there was a second dead magpie making a horrible noise. Magpies and crows have what are called funerals. So when one dies, the other ones all do gather around and will call. And they will also scan the area to see what they think killed this magpie or a crow. Well, what is my favorite bird and why? I think my favorite bird is the emperor penguin. I always kind of wanted to dress up in an emperor penguin suit and go and study the emperor penguins, but I never have. Maybe when I retire.
I've heard that hawks and birds of prey, when they descend on their prey, they like to descend with the sun behind them to blind the prey. Is that true, or is that just like a myth?
I don't know. When hawks descend on their prey, they like to do it with the sun behind them, so they're basically blinding their prey. So I don't know if that's true or not. I know that the buteos, like red-tailed hawks, they are going to kill their prey with their talons. They squeeze them and suffocate them. Whereas the falcons have very weak feet, and they instead have a little notch in their bill, and they use that to snap the spine. And as Sammy pointed out, the raptor may see better with the sun on its back. Why do birds crash into windows? Birds do not see glass. We see glass, but birds don't see glass, and so they end up crashing into windows. They can't see it. Why do they crash into grass? Is that the question?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do birds migrate north for the summer or south for the winter? Where's their native?
Okay, that's a really good question. Do birds migrate north for the summer, or are they migrating south for the winter? Where are they originally from? How many people think that the birds that we see in the summer are really our birds? They're from here. And how many people think these are tropical birds that are coming up for the summer? Birds originated in the tropics, but some birds move up into the temperate zone in the summertime to take advantage of the longer days, so they have a longer time to find food, and the spring abundance of food and the fewer predators. So they're willing to make the long journey to have these really nice breeding opportunities. But they really are tropical birds heading home in the fall. Yes?
Do we really see grass? There's examples of kids running through grass winters.
Oh, there's...
Don't we just kind of infer from looking at the window frame and other things that there's a glass sheet there, but we don't actually see it?
I don't know. So the question is, do we really see glass or not? Because kids can run through windows. I don't know if we just learn that based on the window frame that is indeed going to be filled with glass, or if we actually see the glass. But we do treat the glass as a solid surface, and birds don't. We know glass exists, whereas birds, it's, what is this thing? What is this window you speak of? Chris? Okay, the cedar waxwings. We usually have the cedar waxwings here all winter, but we had so much snow in the valley this year, we did not have cedar waxwings on campus. So we expect to see them again on campus probably in August or September. Yes?
So do we have some birds still living during harsh winter in the valley?
Do we have birds living in harsh winters in the valley? Who has seen any birds this winter? Yes, we have birds that live here year-round. We have little chickadees that weigh as much as 3 pennies that live here year-round. They eat little seeds, and they eat insects that are underneath the bark of the trees. So their food is here, and they can survive here. Yes?
What's the latest news on the Ivory-Billed woodpecker?
What's the latest news on the Ivory-Billed woodpecker? No one has found one. It's probably they think now it might have been an aberrantly plumaged pileated that was seen. It has unfortunately not been found. So the concern is it is indeed extinct. Yes? Yes?
Are there any owls of any kind here?
Are there any owls of any kind here? Yes, we have quite a few owls in the valley. And actually right now there is an owl walk leaving from the Natural Resources building tonight. Yes, so the Audubon Society, if you follow their webpage, they will have owling trips where you can go out at night and see owls.
Well, thank you very much, Kim. That was wonderful.